The first thing Jake Hollister saw was something dark lying in the middle of the grass. At first, in that shimmering Kansas heat, he thought it was a dead deer. But when his horse drew closer, he froze right there in the saddle. It wasn't an animal. It was a woman, young, dressed in a black nun's habit, collapsed under the burning sun like a shadow that had melted into the earth. Jake swung off his horse so fast the dust rose in a cloud behind him. He dropped to one knee. Her bare feet were cut, cracked, and dust-gray. Dried blood clung to every toe. Her habit smelled of sweat, dirt, and sun-baked cloth, the kind of smell that comes from running long and far under a ruthless sky. He touched her wrist. Hot, too hot. Fever heat. The kind a person gets after walking miles with no water and no shade. Her lips moved. Barely. A whisper so faint he would have blamed it on the wind if he hadn't seen her mouth tremble. That is forbidden. Jake leaned closer, brow tightening. She whispered it again, voice fragile, as if the words themselves were dangerous. Jake Hollister had seen a lot in his 52 hard years, droughts that killed cattle quicker than bullets, winters that froze men in their boots, and gunfights where he learned the difference between bravery and foolishness. But he had never seen a nun collapsed alone in the middle of the prairie, fear etched into her face like old scars. Her eyes cracked open, blue, unfocused, and holding a hurt older than she was willing to name. She tried to move, but her body refused. Jake lifted her head gently, heat poured off her like fire. When he eased his hand over her shoulder, she whispered again, shaky and small. That is forbidden. Not a warning. A plea. Jake understood instantly. She wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of what she'd been taught, rules, judgment, the punishment a nun might face for letting a man, any man, lay hands on her, even in mercy. Jake pulled his bandana from around his neck, dipped it into his water skin, and pressed the cool cloth to her forehead. She flinched, then relaxed, almost melting into the blessed cold. Far off, he heard hooves. Someone was riding. Someone headed this way. If they found her like this, lying in his arms, half-conscious and barefooted, the story would twist fast, and not in either of their favor. He slid an arm beneath her knees and another behind her back. She weighed almost nothing. She didn't fight, didn't even flinch, just leaned against him like a woman who had run out of strength long before she'd run out of fear. He lifted her onto his horse, held her steady, and rode slowly toward Hollister Ranch. During the ride, she woke halfway and saw him. Instead of panic, her fingers curled into his shirt like he was the last solid thing left in the world. By the time they reached his small cabin near the creek, Jake knew something wasn't right. Not with her, and not with the story that had driven her into the prairie. Inside, he laid her on his bed, soaked a cloth, and cooled her face again. She blinked awake, eyes clearing just enough to see safety where before she'd seen danger. "Where am I?" she whispered. "Hollister Ranch," Jake said, pulling a chair beside the bed. "Couple miles west of Dodge. Found you passed out in the grass." She nodded, slow but steady, as if she already suspected she'd reached the end of her strength. "My name's Jake," he said. "What's yours?" It took her a moment, like even her own name was a thing she shouldn't hand out lightly. "Sister Elise." Jake nodded. "Elise." Her gaze moved around the cabin. She tensed, gripping the blanket as if ready to bolt if the walls started closing in. Whatever she was running from, it wasn't small. She tried to sit up. Jake steadied her shoulder with a gentle hand. "Easy. No one's coming for you here." Fear flickered across her face, sharp, quick, and deep. Not fear of Jake. Fear of being found. "Jake," she whispered, voice trembling, "if they ask about me, you must say you never saw me." Jake narrowed his eyes. "They? Who's coming after a nun in the middle of a Kansas summer?" Elise looked toward the door, as if expecting shadows to come walking in. Then she spoke, soft and shaking. Jake. I did not run from God. I ran from the people inside the church. Jake sat back, the air suddenly colder. Running from God was one thing. Running from the church, now that was a storm. Elise swallowed hard. The mission in Dodge City, things there are not holy anymore. Jake felt something cold settle in his gut. That mission was a place people trusted, maybe too much. There is a man there, she whispered. Respected. Admired. But he is not the man they think he is. I found letters. Ledgers. Money that should have gone to the poor, the sick, the orphaned, sent instead to saloons and pockets that shouldn't be anywhere near a cross. Jake clenched his jaw. And the older sister I told about it? Elisa's voice cracked. She vanished the next morning. They said she left. But I saw the sheriff with Father Whitlock that same night. After that, he followed me everywhere. Sheriff Collins. Jake knew the man. Never trusted him. Too smooth, too confident, too practiced at pretending he cared. I knew if I stayed, I'd disappear too, she whispered. So I ran. Caught a freight wagon out of Dodge. Walked the rest. And that's how you found me. Tears slipped down her cheeks, quiet, exhausted tears from someone who had run out of strength long before she'd run out of danger. Jake didn't touch her. Didn't speak. He just let her cry until she had no tears left. Finally, he said, I once kept my mouth shut when I should have spoken. My wife needed a doctor. The man turned us away, 'cause we couldn't pay. I walked out without a word. She died 2 days later. I've lived with that silence ever since. He met her eyes, steady and sure. If you're brave enough to speak, I ain't letting you stand alone. 2 mornings later, they rode toward Dodge City. Elise wore one of Jake's old trail hats pulled low over her face. She was still weak, still scared, but she didn't turn back. The roofs of Dodge shimmered ahead. People bustled around, cowboys tying horses, women sweeping porches, children running through the dust. And right in the center stood the mission, tall and silent, wearing its holiness like a mask. Jake dismounted. Elise followed, legs shaking. He stayed close enough to catch her if she stumbled. Near the entrance stood Sheriff Collins, hands on his hips, wearing that smug smile that always made Jake want to wipe it off with a fist. "Mornin', Jake," Collins said. "You bringing her back where she belongs?" Jake didn't blink. "That depends. You plan to tell the truth today?" The sheriff's smile faltered. Then Father Whitlock stepped out. Calm face. Cold eyes. The kind of man who preached love on Sunday and locked secrets away the rest of the week. "There you are, child," Whitlock said smoothly. "Come along. We'll settle this inside." Elise shrank back. Jake stepped forward. "You want her," he said, "you go through me." Collins' hand hovered over his gun. The air tightened. People gathered in a loose circle, whispering, watching. Elise stepped forward, trembling but standing. "I'm not going inside with you," she said. "Not today. Not ever again." The crowd murmured. Doubts rippled like wind. Whitlock's jaw twitched. "Children say foolish things." "I saw the books," she said, louder. "I saw the lies." And just like that, voices rose. The storekeeper pushed forward. "Father owes me 3 months of unpaid bills." A mother near the front shouted, "My daughter disappeared from the mission kitchen. You told me she ran off." Collins swore, yanked his gun. A shot cracked. 2 ranch hands tackled him mid-fire, the bullet hit brick instead of flesh. Chaos burst open. Whitlock bolted toward the mission door, but townsmen seized him before he could slip inside. In the struggle, a metal box clattered to the ground. Papers scattered. Ledgers spilled open like guts. People stared down at the evidence. Names. Numbers. Money meant for the helpless, rerouted into pockets and saloons. No one needed a preacher to explain what they were seeing. By sunset, Collins sat in irons in his own jailhouse. Whitlock was taken away for questioning. And Elise stood in the mission doorway, not a runaway nun, but the woman who dragged the truth into the light. She stayed on at the mission, helping rebuild what corruption had rotted. Every Saturday, when the work was done and the prairie glowed gold, Jake rode into town and waited by the fence. She still wore her habit. Still wasn't sure what to do with her vows. But something had begun the day he found her in the grass, and neither of them pretended otherwise. Sometimes love doesn't shout. Sometimes it simply arrives every Saturday evening, ties its horse to the same post, and waits in the warm light until she's ready to meet it.